House to Home, presented by RE/MAX Diamond Realty.
Off a day, everybody, and welcome to House to Home, that time of the week when I sit down with Liz and Gina from RE/MAX Diamond Realty Guam, and we talk about things that are of interest of you if you are a property owner or a seller. Ladies, half a day, always good to see the both of you, and I'm glad I can share part of my week with you, learning about what a amazing industry real estate continues to be on Guam. And we've talked about public policy and its impact on your private industry for the last several weeks and everything like that. So there's a rather provocative piece of legislation, Gina, I know that you wanted to kind of touch base on this week, and it's getting a lot of press just because there's some language in it that says sellers must disclose certain types of activity if they have occurred on a property, like, you know, drug activity, presence of sex offenders, but one part is haunting and paranormal activity.
Yeah.
How do realtors feel? I mean, I've talked to you, and it's funny because the three of us actually sat down when we could still meet face to face, and you talked about how the Guam Association of Realtors has a very well-defined ethics statement in which you actually disclose if, you know, questionable activity has occurred on a property for the benefit of your clients.
Well, questionable activities, as they are defined in the Code of Ethics, not really questionable, but such like if there's been a death on the premises, we're already mandated to disclose that. It's part of our Code of Ethics. But this goes a little further than that. You know, the way the bill was written. I originally testified when this bill first came up last year, and I was aware of it because it talked about a couple of things that I thought were, like, if I were the seller, these items really troubled me. One of them was that if I was aware of any ghosts or spirits in the home, I don't know exactly how they word that, but they talked about paranormal. That's it. Hauntings.
Here we are. Yeah, I brought that up. I hope you can see it too, right there on that last line.
Yeah. So they defined stigmatized property, and they included the words haunting and other paranormal activity as part of what a seller is mandated to disclose. Now, the thing is, being in the business as long as I have, Liz and I have actually shown the exactly identical homes, and Liz has walked out of there feeling really creeped out, and I've walked out of there saying, I think it was the AC blowing on you. So you know, this is the issue with saying something like that, haunting or paranormal activity. I'm going to say this is really subjective. I've rarely been in a home where I felt haunted, even though, or as an owner, you know, I've sold properties where we absolutely disclosed, hey, you know what? Back in 19 Forgotten, we know that somebody died in the property. And sometimes the manner of death is important to the
exactly
individual,
through non-natural means, right?
Yeah, so we go out of our way to find these out and to tell the potential buyers. And there are occasions where the seller wasn't even aware of it. And we as realtors, we feel that we have an obligation to find these things out and disclose it to the buyers, because everyone has a different comfort level. Their religion may play a factor into this. And so these are things that we go out of our way to disclose. But the problem is, it says hauntings or paranormal activity. What if there's not evidence that somebody died in the property, but you just feel like the property is haunted? What if you don't? How do you disclose that? I mean, what if the buyer moves in and all of a sudden they feel haunted, but the seller said, I never felt haunted.
That's a good point.
I don't know any death. Yeah,
the intuition of the prospective buyer, they just get a weird gut feeling about it. It's like, you know, honey, this is a wonderful place, but you know, I'm just getting this really creepy feeling.
I think it's too subjective to mandate hauntings or paranormal activity. For me, this really scares me in the bill. Okay. And I brought this up originally when it was first introduced.
Now, if I may, Liz, because you know who we are as Pacific people, spirituality and connection with our ancestors and and spirits and possible paranormal activity, that's a big part of who we are, and that's a big part of our culture.
Right.
How do you feel and how this weighs into the possibility to do business?
We're showing properties. It's kind of strange because sometimes different cultures are different. That, for example, they want to know, did someone die on the property? I've had questions like that, and I would say no, but I have sold homes where people have died, either suicide or a natural death. And I've even sold a property where a murder was committed on the premises, and the people, a number of people died during that crime. But when I sold the property, the people came in, they felt it, they said, I don't feel anything, I'm fine, I want to buy it, and they purchased the property. So if we're aware of it, of course we disclose it, but as agents, when we're listing property, as Gina puts it, we have to disclose this happened on the property. But the point she's making is subjective. Everyone has a different sensing. She says we can both go into a property and I would feel something and she wouldn't, or sometimes she would feel something and I don't. But people have different sensitivity level. So I'm concerned that if, and by the way, we do support the bill in terms of the disclosure. Don't get me wrong, because I remember working on the disclosure statement that sellers have to complete. This is 20 years ago. We even had the forms printed, but then we backed off because there was no legislation supporting the bill, and there could have been some liability. So at that point, all these forms went to waste. We had to back off. So, and just recently, the past 3 years, Chris Murphy, I know, has been working on this, which is great because we do need these forms to reflect any defect on the property that the seller has to disclose. So we're in favor of that. The only concern is, what if I sold a house to you today and no disclosure because I didn't sense anything, and then you bought it, and then all of a sudden you're feeling heebie-jeebie or the chairs are moving, and then what? I own the property but never experienced anything, and then
nobody died in there. That's the other thing.
Yeah.
Nobody died in
there. And all of a sudden you're experiencing something. So what happens then? Is there a liability? You're going to take me to court because all of a sudden things are happening and I didn't disclose because I didn't experience anything. My family lived there. Nothing happened. But the moment you moved in, something started to happen.
Now, it is worth pointing out that you, and Liz, I like how you brought up the fact of a colleague of yours, Chris Murphy, who has been working on this concept for at least 3 years now. You said you've been working on similar ideas for much longer. And Chris was basically proposing this to the legislature to develop parity between Guam and similar markets in the mainland, because this type of arrangement is basically uniform across the states, as I understand it, correct?
Right. And we support the bill because there's just probably certain verbiage like the paranormal, the hauntings. I'm not sure if across the nation they've got that verbiage in there, but there's got to be some responsibility on our parts to ensure that for example, you or I or Gina or any seller out there does not get blamed when you occupy a home and you brought the spirits with you. Who's to say?
Now, how about now, Gina, in the interest of capitalism, though, if I can maybe propose this angle, is it fair to say that because of what we believe in, again, as Pacific people, and maybe, a property may be erected on what's considered hallowed ground to a particular culture, is there any way that the presence of haunting, paranormal activity, what have you, could this actually increase the value of a property? It may actually be seen as a good thing for some people.
Well, no, I don't see that, Jace, because I've never had any buyers looking for properties specifically because it's haunted. I don't have people looking for anything like that. So that's never come across my desk in the 35 years I've been practicing real estate. So I don't see it as an added value to a piece of property because we're disclosing that it's haunted. You know, here's the thing. That type of stigma, because we're going to call it a stigma, right? That type of stigma, to me, the way I see things is, if an item is going to affect value, then it really absolutely should be disclosed, right? And here in our environment, you mentioned the culture, Asian culture, local culture, you know, the Pacific Islander culture. We're very sensitive to paranormal activities or spirits in general. And I don't mean that in a positive way. We try to stay away from it. If we feel a property has any kind of spirit, we don't want to intrude on them, right?
Because of respect.
Yeah. So it doesn't add positive value. It actually will decline the value. So if I move into a home and I feel like this home is haunted and I feel the presence of a haunting, and then I want to sell it later. And mind you, I'm saying there's been no death at that premises that I am aware of, but yet I feel the presence of spirits. When I go to sell it, I have to fully disclose that. And you know, our documents right now it says you have to disclose that. The other thing is, but not hauntings, only deaths in the property. The other thing is, you know, the sex offender register, or that there has been drug activity in the home. There's a lot of drug activity going on right now that we're not aware of.
Right.
And so that's going to present an issue. It's going to present an issue. And if we're mandated to disclose the sex register, you know, that there's somebody in the neighborhood is on the sex register, I don't find that that's very current here. So I have to make a disclosure that is subject to a government or a federal government. I don't know if it's a local government or federal government website that I don't think is very current. How is that going to impact? So those are the things that concern me the most.
Well, Liz, I've got one final question, then we'll wrap up. And because you have emphasized, please, Gina.
Jason, I just want to say our contracts right now say, hey, buyer, you got to go and investigate those items. It already says that. So, you know, we'll just have to figure this out.
Okay. Yeah, Liz, I was going to say final question is, you have emphasized customer service like throughout the duration of this program. And do you believe that this bill, written in the form it's currently in, impedes your ability to provide the kind of customer service to the client that you would like to provide?
I think it's going to help buyers and sellers because they have to disclose any material defect on the property. So if you're buying property, this will help you because you want to know, are there any issues? And it obligates the seller. But in some cases, the sellers have not lived on Guam for 10 years. So, but they still are obligated to complete the disclosure form. So when the disclosure form is completed, sometimes you're going to see unknown. And it, as Gina puts it, in our document, it says the buyer has to do their due diligence to, to satisfy that, hey, this is the property I want to move forward with. And in the contract, there's a period for their due diligence. And during the due diligence period of inspection, they could hire someone. Now, if they decide they're going to cancel based on their inspection, that is in the contract and they may do so. So, but basically this is to help the buyers as well, because some people have bought, disclosures were not made. There was a structural crack that's maybe someone repaired and then there were issues later. So it is for consumer protection. And and we support it because it's supposed to help everyone. And the only thing is probably the vagueness in some of the language that maybe has to be tweaked. Exactly.
So forgive the pun, but the spirit of the bill is acceptable. We might just want to tweak the verbiage a little bit. Sorry, I just had to say that.
Absolutely.
All right, ladies. And on that note, we are going to end. So thank you as always for your insight on Guam real estate. We really appreciate it, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you, Jay.
All right, bye-bye. Take care.